So I'm live, and this is a little intro while I wait for some people to join the live stream, so anyone who watches it back on my channel will actually see this. So this is for you. Don't feel bad thinking you missed out, because you can watch the video, and I'm doing this little intro especially for you. Nobody who tunes in live sees this because it always takes a couple minutes for people to join, but some people are very quick, like Celtic King has just dropped in and said hi. How is as has Captain Fizzman. So yes, this is, I'm launching one of my semi-regular attempts to do a video every day for a month. Hi Aussie, Brick Chick, Stephen and Benjamin, a whole bunch of people piling in now, that's nice to see. So yes, I am a lover of bad puns and laboured acronyms. And a lot of YouTubers, it's become this thing to do in April, a video every day in April, and they call it VEDJINA. And it was a couple of years ago, maybe only 1 year ago, that I wanted to do the video every day thing, but I missed April, and it was June, and I just noticed the initials for video every day in June is VEG, and I immediately thought I can do something tacky with a pun there, and it took me ages to come up with an acronym that I could justify calling it VEDJINA, a video every day July if nothing arises, because I'm not going to kill myself. I do want to do a video every day this month, but I'm not going to kill myself, but I'm also going to cheat, because honestly the live streams are a lot of fun for me, B, seems to be a good way to reach people and like bond with an audience, and C, it's comparatively easy to do. Sometimes the motivation to do a video isn't quite there. Did I say July? Obviously I meant June. Video every day in June if nothing arises. But I could also do it again in July, obviously, and then I can do it again in January. My love of laboured acronyms, bad puns, all wrapped up in there. So yes, I probably do a lot of live streams this month, because I find them comparatively easy to do. It's very relaxing, just sitting and having a chat, and hopefully I can use these live streams to develop some ideas that I can sharpen a little bit to do in an edited video, because I always have lots of ideas bouncing around in my head. I want to say to people, oh man, the videos I don't make, they're really good, because I usually make topical videos. Often if a big event happens and then a couple days pass and I haven't made a video, I feel like it's too late. I think no, it's the moment's past, and I've missed that, and I wasn't motivated to do it, strike while the iron is hot. So yeah, hopefully doing the live streams will give me a bit more motivation. Celtic King asking about AZ, as people always do, as people should always ask about AZ. He's okay. He is having problems with anxiety lately. So on top of all his physical ailments, which are many and varied and quite severe, he has to deal with quite severe anxiety as well, which makes him not want to go into the outside world, which has actually been plaguing him quite badly for the last couple of weeks. Captain Fizzman, Anthony, I have been fine, thank you very much. Am I Labour or Greens? If I was going to get serious about politics, I'd be in a party myself, actually doing the activism rather than just voting for someone. It's weird. Okay, I have problems with the Greens. Like, if I did one of those stupid online tests, like, which party represents you best, it would always say Greens. But my life is not governed by BuzzFeed or Facebook quizzes, and using my own little mind, I just have some problems with the Greens, which is weird because I have problems with Labor too, but I would be more likely to vote Labor than the Greens because I don't want the Liberal Party in power, and the most direct way to get them out of power is to put Labor in power. So yeah. Yes, okay. Stephen says he joined my political party. Well, I tell you one thing my political party would be is not knuckling under to people who try to guilt you into things. Just being honest and saying, you know what, vote yourself. You know, a lot of Donald Trump supporters say he's honest, he tells it what it is. No, he's a liar. Virtually everything he says, he's a lie, but he's got no filter. And some people who feel like they're sick of politicians always talking through sorry, I just got distracted by that comment. What do I think about the suggestion for changes to citizenship test saying should citizenship have an English proficiency test that says you have to have university level English or you're not allowed to become a citizen? What that question is actually saying is, should someone who wants to migrate here be better than English at than 75% of the people born here? It's just like, sure, that makes sense. There is a whole bunch of people like, let's call them One Nation supporters, that I would like to force the same test on, and when they fail it, because they will, I would like to put them on a boat with no engine and no sails and probably a few leaks in it and just push them out into the fucking ocean. So yeah, my basic feeling about citizenship test that requires a high level of English proficiency is like higher than most people who are born here. Yeah, sure, that makes perfect sense. What's not to love about that? And my face aerobics friend has joined too. Hello. So yes, that idea of trying to force. Look, here's the thing about speaking English. Now, generally, I think when people move to a particular country, they're doing themselves a disservice if they don't speak the language fluently. The idea of being punitive on them when life's complex, you can just sit there and go, everyone should speak the language. I think it would be better for them if they did, but life's a lot more complex than just saying a blanket statement like that. Like, there are family migrations, and all those sorts of things. If you're going to significantly get ahead, then I think you do need to speak the local language. I just love the idea of a test for citizenship that the vast majority of people born in the country couldn't pass. That to me is just humorous. It's like, oh no, you dropped out of a vagina on that part of land, so you are innately special. It's just funny. Yes, and as my friend was pointing out, that the English test is very, very hard, and yes, you're right. This is a weird side thing. The English citizenship test, the language competency might be hard, but their driving test is notoriously difficult. Like, if you're a foreigner, you're allowed to drive there, on an international license, but to get an actual UK license is one of the most brutally rigorous driving tests in the world. Like, it's renowned for it. Like, a lot of consular staff, people who work for the ambassador for various countries who are in the UK, they never get a local license because it's too goddamn hard. And I'm a fan of that, quite honestly, making it harder for people to drive cars. When you see the amount of accidents, the amount of people killed in road accidents, it just should be harder to get a license than it is in most places. But you get in so many places, people treat it like, no, it's my right to have a car. It's my right to go and kill people when I drive, like an incompetent moron. I did see a joke on, I think it was on Twitter, that I liked. Someone talking about, it's like future conversation where all the cars are self-driving, all run by computers, and someone from our area is like, I'm an old grandpa at this, talking to a little kid who's only ever known the world with self-driving cars, which are remarkably safe. And just saying, when I was young, there was no self-driving cars. People were responsible. They controlled everything. People were in control of the cars. That was real driving. And the kid says, wow, people without computers to help them? You did that without killing people? No. We killed thousands of people every year, but we thought that was okay. It's just like, fuck. The shit that we accept. Like, people will focus on something and fixate and be paranoid. In the modern world, a lot of people are worried about terrorists, being attacked by terrorists, dying in terrorist attack. Because when that happens, it's big and scary and awful. And you think, oh my God, I'm at risk. The fact that you are like literally 1,000 times more likely to be killed in a road accident than by a terrorist. My God, in the US, you are more likely to be killed by a toddler with a gun than by a terrorist. That's the statistics. I think last year it was averaging more than a death a week from a toddler with a gun. How fucked is your society when that is happening? And it's just like we're really bad at risk assessment. That's why lotteries work so well, because everyone's going, I'm going to win the lottery. I'm going to be rich. Tendai, I hope there's a market for the self-driving cars. Look, I think the tipping point will come when there are enough self-driving cars on the road where people go, whoa. We're now suddenly at the point where a human-driven car is hundreds of times more likely to be in an accident than a self-driving car. And the insurance premiums will go through the roof. Like, you want to drive your own car because you're an individual, fine. It will cost you minimum $10,000 a year in insurance premiums to cover the risk. And if you go off and don't have insurance, the criminal liability attached to you willfully choosing to drive the car yourself rather than have a computer drive it for you, that'll clear the roads of human-driven cars real quick. Oh, Olivia, my silly mask. That's old school. For those who don't know, when I started on YouTube, I wore a mask all the time. This was for about 18 months, my first 18 months on YouTube. And I ended up with a whole bunch of characters. The core character was Mr. Angry. Whenever I was just doing a shouty video, it was the angry mask. And the big reason for that was my day job. I'm an IT contractor. big bad ads, hashtag bring back the mask. Look, the masks will probably reappear in the future. But why I wore it is my day job. I'm an IT contractor, and that pays really quite well, and I don't want to jeopardize that job. And the IT world here in Melbourne was and is relatively small, conservative, and gossipy. And I thought, I don't want my ability to get paid employment jeopardized by this thing I'm doing for fun. So I thought I'd be pseudo-anonymous and I'd wear a mask. And also because I did a theatre degree at college. That's actually how I know Aidsy. We did the same degree, a thing called Bachelor of Arts in Theatre Media at, it was Mitchell College back in my day. It's now the Mitchell campus of Charles Sturt University. And we did all sorts of theatre and performance training in that, including learning about medieval commedia dell'arte mask performance, where you would do characters. Each mask was an archetypal character. And so I learned how to work with masks. Now, to me, when I get a mask, it's a character. I see a character almost straight away. I imagine how that mask talks, what motivates it, who it is. And the particular style I learned was from a production that Aidsy was actually in. It was a mask show, and some of it was the traditional commedia dell'arte masks, but some was cheap plastic masks bought from like a $2 shop with full-face plastic masks, but just with the jaw cut out, so your real mouth was there. And just watching that, like a half mask with mouth, despite the fact the top is sort of solid and non-expressive, having a human mouth there really brought it to life, and it was a really strong visual. And that's what I remembered. So when I came up with the idea of doing the angry stuff on video, I decided the mask would somewhat protect my anonymity, but B, I could do characters. And I mean, I ultimately had more than a dozen characters. There were 4, besides Mr. Angry, there were 4 core characters. They were the next 4 that I came up with, and they were Halloween masks, various monster masks. And I think I called them in videos the 4 housemates of the apocalypse, because in my mind they lived together. They were in a shared house. The shared house was basically inside my brain. And I had a whole story for all of them, 4 of them. One was this red devil mask, and I just called him Mr. Red. And for me, he was he's like a jerky guy who's into heavy metal and thinks he's worshipping the Dark Lord. Like, basically, he thinks he's very serious and dark, and but he's really kind of pathetic. So that was Mr. Red. And one was a witch mask, but when I cut the bottom of the face out of it, it didn't look like a witch. It just looked like this really dull-eyed individual that I called Mr. Boring. Mr. Boring would talk like this. He's boring. And he would say boring things. And you can only really take him in small doses. And one was this other demonic one. It was like yellow and brown demon mask. And he had these really crazy bugged out eyes. And I think I just called him Mr. Insane because he looked crazy. He was just, crazy. He'd do things like, drink drain cleaner and whatnot on a dare. He was just seriously unbalanced. And the other one was a vampire. And worked out because they're really red lips and these big arched eyebrows, and he just looked very special, very camp, and he was Mr. Flamboyant. He was just flamboyant, and he loved the world, and everything was his oyster, and he was the only one of the 4 who was remotely functional, remotely capable of existing in society, and he just continued to hang out with the other 4 out of sympathy, really, to the extent I started to suspect he had a thing with Mr. Red, but from Mr. Flamboyant's point of view, it was really just a sympathy fuck. He felt sorry for Mr. Red and was trying to cheer him up. That was how much I developed the characters in my head. They all had interactions. So, and the question was posed, why did I stop? Basically because I realized while I enjoyed the mask and a core audience enjoyed them, for a lot of people, it was a barrier. The unnatural state of the masks was actually stopping a lot of people from connecting with what I was doing, and it was limiting what I could do. So every now and then I'll make a video with masks just for a laugh, but for all the people who did like them, the masks did form a kind of barrier. I mean, hilariously, I even had a go at stand-up comedy in the deep dark past, and when I wanted to video them for my channel, this was like before I'd stopped wearing the masks, so I went to an open mic night and I actually wore the mask, the Mr. Angry mask, while I did it, and in a live setting that freaked people the fuck out. It was like doing their heads in, to the point when I started shouting angrily and gesticulating, which is something an enormous number of male comics do. It's not that outlandish. But with the mask, I saw people in the front row physically recoiling like they were scared. They're like, what the fuck is going on here? What the fuck? This is doing my head in. So I realized there were limits to the usefulness of the mask. So, yes. So they'll maybe come back. I even toyed around with making comics with the mask characters, and I made a few because I have like an app on my phone where I can comicify images. Ooh, what's this from Adam? Stateless, my parents weren't registered, my father passed away. Oh, being stateless sucks. There are a number of different ways you can end up stateless, and fuck, it's such a pain in the ass if it happens. It's like, you know, that Tom Hanks movie, The Airport, or whatever it was called, which was inspired by a real story. Like, and that guy ended up stateless because while he was on holidays, there was a revolution in his Eastern European country, and so the country on his passport no longer existed when he tried to go through an airport. But yes, the terminal, that's it. Thank you, Stephen. It was the terminal, not the airport. But yes, the whole thing with if a parent dies and you haven't been declared on a form, I mean, man, there is shit that can happen that gets you. Once politics is so fucked up, if you end up stateless for whatever reason, that shit, like, okay, there is a move which I actually think is relatively legit, like that the Australian government and other governments do. Someone who's a citizen leaves the country and decides, I'm going off to fight in this war in another country. I'm going to Syria, I'm going to Iraq, I'm going to Lebanon, I'm going to Afghanistan, and I'm going to fight for this cause that I believe in. They go like, no, what you're doing is actually illegal. That's a criminal act. We're going to revoke your citizenship while you're away. So you no longer have a valid Australian passport because you aren't an Australian citizen anymore. But they got into that country on an Australian passport, and they don't have a passport for their birth country, so they're now stuck in another country and they're stateless, which they brought on themselves. So yes, as opposed to some of the difficulties that happen to people, that's really not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. I am basically in favour of, look, someone wants to illegally go overseas and fight in another war, you fucking deserve what happens afterwards. But yeah, politics is weird. So Hey, yeah. This is the thing I wanted to practice around on. Like I was talking about, we talked before about if I had a political party, one thing I wouldn't do is apologise for shit. And because, see, when I look at American politics, even prior to Trump, Trump's just the worst example of it. But I always thought like people on the conservative side of things, they felt like, oh, the Democrats are weak, the Republicans are strong. But the Republicans are fake strong, like they're lying. They're a weak person's version of what a strong person is. But to an extent, I could actually see how some people felt like, no, I want someone to reassure me. I want someone to behave forcefully and unapologetically, and that makes me feel strong. I don't go for it because that's an illusion and you're lying to yourself, and it's kind of pathetic. But I get with them thinking like, no, the Democrats are too apologetic and they're weak and spineless. The Republicans are strong and don't apologize. It's a fake strong, and that's why I can't get behind it. But man, I just said my political party, I wouldn't be apologizing for shit. Like if I said something that I meant and it upset people, I go, okay, I said something that upset you. You now have to make a decision because I'm sticking by that because I fucking meant it. So now you have to decide what that means to you, because I'm not going to pander to you and I'm not going to suck up to you. And sorry, I just got a message there. I'm going to try and do. Oh wow, did I go off then? Okay, I'll never do that again. Okay. Did I disappear then? That was a mistake. Won't do that again. Okay, hopefully I'm back. Hopefully people can see me again now. A little bit of a mistakey poo on my part. I didn't realise I'm soon. Patriotic Australian, you're right. Hello, Stephen. Yes, I'm back. And this is a thing that need to explain to Americans occasionally. Your party, the Democrats, are basically equivalent to a middle-of-the-road conservative party in Australia and Europe. Like, our actual progressive parties are so far to the left of the Democrats, and your Republicans, particularly in the last 30 years, are so far to the right of a mainstream conservative party in either Europe or Australia. It's really, so I occasionally have to explain that to Americans, like, oh yeah, okay. It's like, particularly if someone's a conservative and they go, oh, the Democrats are just commies. Dude, you've got no fucking idea. By American standards, I'm a raving loony left commie. That's not really how I see myself, but on the American political spectrum, I'm so far to the left. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I guess to an extent, we're all guilty of being a little insular and only seeing the world through our own perspective and not understanding that other people are very happy with a system that seems very alien to us. For instance, okay, if you're from a democratic country, you think that is naturally the best thing. So when you see countries that are run by a dictator, wherever they may be, Europe, Asia, Middle East, Africa, you go, that is definitely wrong. But you can go to countries where a large chunk of the population actually likes things being run either as a dictatorship or like with a royal family running things, where if you're very democratically minded, that just seems completely wrong. But other people like it. Mr. Stephen, will the UK have a far left leader, namely Jeremy Corbyn? It will be very interesting to see. See, I've got a good friend through YouTube, Frankie the Skin, Frank Castle. He's a old school Tory, Thatcher loving Tory voter. And he looks at the current Tories and just goes, the fuck is this? I don't even want to vote for them. Like, he definitely can't bring himself to vote for Jeremy Corbyn because he's way not a socialist. But he actually said, look, if there was like a conservative Labour, like Tony Blair type Labour, he might have ended up voting for them. He can't bring himself to vote for someone who has such a sort of socialist background as Jeremy Corbyn. But I mean, it would be very interesting to see what would happen with the UK run by a government headed by a populist lefty. You've got Trump and some European countries having populist right-wingers coming to power. But if Corbyn got elected, if the Labour Party got elected with Corbyn at the helm, you'd have a government led by an old school populist lefty. And it would be very interesting to see what happened. Patriotic Australian, that is a reasonable question that you are not the only one to ask. In Australia, why don't the Labour Party and the Greens form an alliance, a coalition, like the Liberals and the Nationals do, the two Conservative parties? Short answer is, I think too many people in Labour hate the Greens. I'm just going to be brutally honest. I think that is the big thing that makes it unlikely, because Labour has factions and the right wing of the Labour Party really fucking hates the Greens. The left wing of the Labour Party is not that fond of the Greens because they see the Greens undercutting some of their vote. I think I can be honest in saying a big thing stopping Labour and the Greens from forming a coalition is Labour wanting to hold the power themselves and not share it. And, you know, a bunch of people in the Greens can be complete dicks as well. And a lot of people in the Labour Party, rightly or wrongly, are like pragmatic career politicians, and they don't want to put up with what they see as bullshit from Green candidates who can say outlandish things because they're never going to be in power, so they'll never be implementing policy. And Labour doesn't want to put up with the Green shit. Mr. Stephen, talking about the Lib Dems in the UK, I basically wrote the Lib Dems off as a bad fucking joke when they formed a coalition with the Tories. And that's just me. Line under that, pack of fucking wankers, self-serving shitheads, giving power to some of the worst pricks around. And I think that's what the general voting public in the UK said, because the Lib Dem vote has gone from that one election high point where they got enough seats to be an infiltrate to their vote has just bottomed out. Like, no one trusts them. No one feels like the Lib Dems stand for anything. That's my personal opinion, and it seems to be backed up broadly by the voting public. We've seen funny things in Australian politics with fringe parties. That people on an extreme fringe, and they've all been right-wing fringe parties, they like arbitrarily drag some people together and say, hey, let's form a party of wackos, and then they're shocked to learn, hey, when you get angry fringe conspiracy theorists into a group, they don't get on very well. The Palmer United Party fragmented almost straight away. Pauline Hanson's latest version of One Nation is this close to falling apart completely. So it's no mean feat to hold a major party together. When you get a bunch of fringe nutters together, they tend to not get on all that well. Sorry, Peter was asking, now what's covfefe? Or covfefe, whatever Donald Trump put in a tweet. I mean, on one level, it's hilarious that Trump did this tweet where his brain obviously stopped working and sent it and left it there and didn't follow up. Like, he's just hit the wrong keys. Like, autocorrect does some terrible things. He's obviously got autocorrect switched off because that would have changed to something else. But Estelle was like, yeah, no, pretty sure that he just was in bed and fading out and had a micro. I'm not even joking. I think he had a micro stroke when he went out. Like, Trump's health is a serious concern. It's a really serious concern. KK's last smile. Why didn't I say this is live confefe? Yes, you know what? It's only going to be a hot meme for a couple of days. I should have done that. I'm all about the confefe. But yes, that is weird. Like, Trump is so fucking strange. It's like he's obviously incompetent. He's obviously criminal. He's obviously just a low-rent shyster. But no one's stopping him. It is so strange. Oi, Peter, what? I just have such enormous... What am I drinking, Mr. Stephen? It's actually, look, it's not sponsored, but look, vanilla Pepsi Max. And maybe just a dash of this in there as well, which is also black. But that is an absinthe that is 85% alcohol. Woo! I mean, the name is Jacques Zerot, so I think that's probably French. Really? Yeah? A French absinthe? But I quite like this. Like, for those who've never had absinthe, it's a aniseed-based drink. Okay. Oh, the whole thing about absinthe making you trip is just PR. It's a weird scare campaign from the early 20th century because the Bohemians loved drinking absinthe. I'll be seeing covfefe, Abigail. I'll be saying covfefe. Olivia, fair call. I didn't drink. Yeah, okay, yes, if you have liver problems, that's a good reason to not drink. I didn't drink when I was younger. What does it say that I only started drinking in my 40s? I finally got completely disillusioned with life and felt like the only way to keep doing it is to occasionally have a drink or two. Very rarely get absolutely scuttered, probably like 3 times in my whole life have I got like really paralytic drunk and thrown up. You don't believe me, what, that I don't get absolutely blind drunk? Well, I don't know. I'm trying to count the amount of times I've drunk to the point that I've thrown up. I think it's 3 times. It's not more than that. It's either 2 or 3 times. Oh, God. No, Budweiser. I don't drink beer. I hate beer. I still hate beer. I do drink cider. And not the fruity one. I don't hate the fruity ones. They're too sweet. But I just like real... I'm a romantic drunk. That's like a really flattering thing to say, equal drunk. Oh my God, Celtic King, have I ever posted a drunk video? Just search, go on my channel, like search AngryAussie drunk. Yeah, see, Coco's jumped right in. Yes, he has. I've seen him. He's done it. Yeah, just search the videos on my channel. Just search AngryAussie drunk. And there are varying videos where I'm at varying degrees of drunkenness. I did a live stream once years ago. Like, I mean, it's probably 5 years ago, where I was watching videos and drinking really heavily. There was no one in the house but me. So I was just drinking, and I forget. I know I was watching 300, and I think I watched a couple movies. Because like this live stream went on for fucking 4 or 5 hours at least, and I got really, really drunk, and like I was watching 300, saying, some people say this movie's a little bit gay. Well, if watching almost naked, muscled, oiled up men is gay, then gay me up. And but I woke up the next morning, and I didn't have a hangover or anything. I don't get hangovers. Sometimes I feel a little bit the next day, but I don't get hangovers because I don't drink that heavily. This night I did, but I didn't have a hangover, and I woke up and I went, one of the first thoughts that occurred to me when I woke up was, I don't remember going to bed. I really don't know how last night ended, which is disturbing because I remember I was live on the internet. So being live on the internet and not remembering what I did, there's a lot of scope in there for something to go terribly, terribly, terribly wrong. And I'm like, what happened? And so I sheepishly went onto social media and I just said, hey, we watched the live stream last night. How did it end? Because I don't remember. And then a couple of people told me like, oh, you just kind of zoned out and there was a period where you stopped talking for a really long time and were just kind of staring, and then really suddenly you went, oh fuck, so fucked, going to bed. And I was streaming from a laptop and I just shut the laptop. So it was not as bad as I was thinking, because leaked sex tape, I don't know, anything could have happened. But that was one of the more troubling things, being quite drunk on a live stream and not remembering what you did and just going, oh God, what happened? Because I'll often, if I've had a few drinks before I go to sleep, I will take headache tablets, like ones with codeine, before I go to bed, to try and head off having a headache in the morning. And that was the other thing. When I woke up not remembering how I went to bed, I went into the bathroom and I kind of knocked everything out of the medicine cabinet and the headache tablets were out. And I went, oh, at least I remembered to take the headache tablets before I went to bed. I kind of trashed the medicine cabinet just because apparently I didn't have the manual dexterity to just go, oh, my headache tablet. And I knocked it. Shit was all over the bathroom. I had to clean that up. So I was together enough to have headache tablets before I went to bed, but I actually had to ask other people, how did that finish? Because I didn't remember. Man, that could have gone so wrong. It's kind of like, I've talked to Aidsy about, we could do a live stream like that. Yeah, Patriotic Aussie, I hardly ever have that not remembering. And I remembered whole chunks of it, like I didn't, the night wasn't wiped out, but what disturbed me is I didn't remember finishing. I didn't remember going to bed. It's like, sometimes you go out and you go like, I don't remember anything. I remember this happened and that happened and something happened in the middle. But not remembering how I finished and streaming it live to the internet. Like knowing that I'd streamed it live to the internet, but not remembering what happened. Oh my God, that was so disturbing. Yeah, Keiko, if you find yourself regularly getting blackout drunk, that's a very good reason to stop drinking altogether. Like I said, I basically drink in moderation. Like, I just had the equivalent of, when you talk about standard drinks, I suppose I had, 4 or 5, this counts as like 4 or 5 standard drinks. So, and that will be it for tonight. And I might do it tomorrow night. So, hi from Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Yeah, find yourself getting blackout drunk. It's kind of like, in my misspent youth, I might have partied a bit, might have used some chemical additives to party all night, but never to excess. And having met people who fell in the bit, like either going into psychosis from amphetamine abuse, or you start having flashbacks from taking acid. Are you going to bed, Peter? Night. Yeah, it's the same as if you get blackout drunk all the time, that's a good reason to stop drinking. If you have a psychotic episode from amphetamine abuse, or if you're having flashbacks from doing acid, or you smoke too much dope to the point it makes you paranoid and unable to function, that's a good reason to stop. Because, abusing any of these things is relatively easy to do. It's also relatively easy to not abuse them. Do I miss Tony Abbott? Well, look, he certainly gave me a lot of material. There's no two ways about it. But, he's been replaced on the global stage by Trump, really. And Abbott's still about, like, he's so desperate. He so thinks he's still relevant. He pops up and says stupid shit still, even though he lost virtually all support in his own party. Like when he started hacking on his replacement, Malcolm Turnbull, even his supporters went like, dude, fucking no, okay? You don't need to be giving the opposition ammunition with that bullshit. You need to fucking get over yourself. But he popped up just this week saying some dumb shit like, it's this conservative talking point at the moment that the head of ASIO said the wrong thing about Islamic terrorists. Because what he said when Pauline Hanson dribbled with their brainless shit about, no, refugees are all terrorists, he's going, no, there is no causal link between someone being a refugee and being a radicalized terrorist. So refugees aren't putting us at greater risk. He's not saying there aren't radicalized Muslims who are dangerous, because they investigate those people all the time and arrest them all the time. But just going with this lie that anyone who's Muslim is dangerous is just fucking ridiculous, and he's doing the terrorists PR for them, basically. And so he put his foot down and said, no, what you're saying is incorrect. There's no direct link between being a refugee and being a terrorist. That simply isn't true. But now it's become this big conservative talking point of, yeah, it is. ASIO, the government's secret police, they're just a bunch of lefty apologists. It's like, when the fuck did being conservative mean denying reality? Because it's like, we used to have intellectual conservatives and intellectual leftists, but now it's like, to be influential on the conservative side is saying you just have to be a dickhead. Like if you're a dickhead who upsets people, the conservative talking heads think you're cool. And Eagle Jew pointing out that Bolt's just got a raging hard on for this ASIO thing. It's like, it makes no sense. Like, there is no one more qualified. ASIO are surveilling everyone. They're investigating everyone. They know where the danger is. And for idiot fucking talking heads like Andrew Bolt, who are just pushing an agenda and have no genuine understanding of what's going on, for them to say, no, the person with all the information and the entire apparatus to run things, they're wrong. They must parrot my talking point. Nothing else is acceptable. It's like, fuck off, you fucking idiot. It's like so mind-blowingly stupid. This thing, it's got to the point where it's so bizarre, particularly the loud, obnoxious people in the media and online do the conservative talking points. Everything they say about people they don't like is actually true about them. They're just going about, oh, the left aren't dealing with reality. They're off in La La Land. You've got Andrew Bolt saying the person who heads ASIO, who is in the best position of anyone to assess where the danger is, he's wrong and he needs to parrot the thing that I feel. Him and his evidence and his surveillance and his analysis, that's meaningless next to my feelings. My feelings are what's important. And then you get the people on the right saying, oh, all the people on the left, they're just like snowflakes. They need a safe space. You know, free speech over everything. And Kathy Griffin holds a mannequin's head that looks like Donald Trump covered in blood, like you're going to cut Donald Trump's head off. And it's the crime of the century. It's like, what happened to that free speech thing? What happened? Like, you know, Ted Nugent literally stood at his concerts with a fucking automatic rifle saying, I'm going to go to a bloody Washington and jam this up Obama and Hillary's ass and fire it. You know, you need to kill them all. And he got invited to the White House after saying that by Donald Trump. And it was like, what? It's like the people on the right, the bleeding people, oh no, you can't say that. It's like free speech up until the point you say something that I don't like and then you must be shut down. It's just fucking bizarre how all these bleating voices who fancy themselves the champions of conservatism, everything they criticize people they don't like for, it's actually true about them. Tendo is saying they don't understand irony at all. They are irony free. Like again, and of course the biggest example is Donald Trump, who will just say something absolutely insane and with a complete lack of self-awareness, and saying, oh, it's terrible that someone said that just after you said everyone from Mexico is a rapist drug dealer. Jenny asking, is Peter Dutton the next Liberal leader? I hope so, because that will keep them out of power for a very long time. The idea that someone who's as awful, as evil, and as unpersonable as Peter Dutton is regarded as serious leadership material, that shows how bereft of character the Liberal Party is at the moment. Like, Dutton is just awful. He's just the personification of evil. Like, you know, a fucking retired Queensland drug cop who now oversees policy that fucks people over and sends people. Oh, he's just the worst. So I hope he's the next Liberal leader, because it'll keep him out of power for a long time if he is. He's just awful. Oh my God. And that's like really that lack of awareness. I was really surprised, talking about Liberal leaders, I was as surprised as anyone at how spineless Turnbull was. Like, how scared he was, how desperate he was to hold on to power, that he panders to people who hate him. Like, it was the whole idea is that he wasn't Tony Abbott, that he was a more level-headed person who would, you know, push the Conservative line, but in a more intelligent way. And he's so scared of the extreme right of his own party who hate him. He panders to them as if that's going to make any difference. They still hate him, and he can't achieve anything because he can't follow what he actually thinks are the things he should do, because the right will eat him if he does. And so he just comes across as so weak and so pathetic, and he's so useless. Like, the one thing Tony Abbott wasn't is weak. I mean, he's unbalanced and stupid and deranged and disconnected from reality, but he wasn't weak, you know. So you could at least latch on to that. But it's like Turnbull stands for nothing. And he's just this empty suit. He's just so in love with power, being able to say, I was Prime Minister. That was his prize. But there was nothing beyond that. There was nothing. And the legacy I will leave Australia is this. I will implement these policies that will change Australia like this, and that will be my legacy. No, there's none of that. There's just, but I was Prime Minister. What did you do as Prime Minister? Nothing. But I was Prime Minister. It's like, God, that is so weak. That is so pathetic. It's like, it's really sad to see how pathetic he is. A patriot got asked me, do I think Turnbull's still a Republican? Yeah, he's a Republican. But again, that's just another thing he won't speak out on because he's scared of the right. Mr. Stephen, look, okay, you raise a good point. I, along with so many people, said Donald Trump will never be President of the US. And he was. And here's me saying Dutton will never be leader. No, and I will be clear, I am actually not saying Dutton won't be leader of the Liberals. It appears like, I don't know, a reasonable chance. I am saying I don't think he could successfully lead the party to an electoral win. And you're right, it's really dangerous. Now, if we're got used to saying, that'll never happen, then it happens. And I'll say it anyway. I will dare the devil to make this happen because I am quite confident Dutton is so awful. Him leading the Liberals, they would never get power. Eagles, you saying Bishop would lead before Dutton. Look, I think she'd be more competent, but there's a whole bunch of people who are pissed off at her because they think she's complicit in Abbott getting knifed, and that works against her with regards to getting votes in the party room. That, I don't know. It's kind of like, I was like, who do I like on the Labour side? Because I'm not a fan of Bill Shorten at all. His whole, I'm not Tony Abbott, only takes you so far. Absolutely true. You're not Tony Abbott, and that's a big plus. But I'm not a fan of Shorten at all. The people in the Labour Party I am a fan of, they're never going to be there. Like I heard someone say, because I'm a big fan of Penny Wong. I think she's fucking hilarious. She's a freaking hard as nails politician. I feel like she does stand for things, and I think she's really funny as well. But people say, oh yeah, Penny Wong should leave the Labour Party. Oh my God. That's never going to work. Did you see what happened when Julia Gillard was Prime Minister? It's like the rampant sexism, the people who literally couldn't cope with the idea of a woman being in charge. As she said in her final speech, the sexism wasn't everything, but it sure wasn't nothing. There was an enormous groundswell of freaked out people who couldn't cope with the idea of a woman in charge. So we're seeing the sort of vicious abuse Julia Gillard was treated with as Prime Minister. Penny Wong? Really? You want to put an Asian lesbian in there next and see how she goes? Oh my God. It's like, I wouldn't do that to Penny Wong. Abigail, that is a really good point. Penny Wong was put in a really bad position when Julia Gillard refused to push marriage equality. And she didn't break party lines then. But that was a terrible thing to do to her. What Gillard had obviously done, this is my opinion, she was fighting so many fires, she had so many battles on so many fronts. I think she just pulled Penny Wong aside and said, you must know that I'm an atheist. There's no religious objection to you getting married. I am not opposed to you at all. But politically, I can't deal with that. I can't have that again. I can't have one more thing. I can't have one more stick for people to hit me with. I can't go out and push marriage equality because that would just sink me completely. So the official party line has to be that we're not pushing for marriage equality. And I need you on board with that, which was a fucking terrible situation to put Penny Wong in. But she never broke ranks. She never broke ranks. And she never spoke out against a party policy that said she herself was less deserving of basic human rights. Which that's as pragmatic as a politician gets. Throwing yourself under a bus to not break party ranks, that's as tough as it gets. Personally, Penny Wong is probably my favourite person in Australian politics. She's fucking awesome. But no, she can't be leader of the party. Australia can't deal with it. The idea of an Asian lesbian running the country, Australia can't deal with it. I think she's awesome, but Australia just can't deal with it. I wouldn't subject Penny Wong to that. The hate, the bile she would get. I mean, I'm sure she gets it on a daily basis now, but it would be ratcheted up by a factor of 100 if she was leader of the party. I wouldn't subject her to that. That's just awful. I mean, if you want some of her processing, like when Penny Wong grills someone in question time, you don't want to be on the receiving end of that. Sorry, just a comment there from the Patriotic Australia saying, if marriage equality became a thing, I'd marry a man just to piss off my conservative family. Look, I tell you what, if I won lotto, like if I had a lot of money and marriage equality came in, I would pay for my gay friend's wedding at Margaret Court Arena. I'd pay for them to have their ceremony and reception at Margaret Court Arena, because you can hire it out for whatever you want. For people who don't know what I'm getting at there, Margaret Court is an Australian tennis player. She's, a top tennis player back in her day, many years ago, and one of the major stadiums in Melbourne here where the Australian Open is held is named after her, Margaret Court Arena. And she's been in the news for the last week or so because she's an uber conservative Christian minister these days, and she hates the gays. She's like, no marriage equality. And because the head of the Qantas airline is gay, and he's one of a number of corporate leaders in Australia who've been part of a campaign for marriage equality. Margaret Court says she'd never fly Qantas because of them supporting marriage equality. And it turns out that Margaret Court is not just homophobic. She's transphobic. She says transgender kids are, the devil has them. And she's seriously racist as well. Basically, she's a fucking horrible person. There's one thing of people have differing opinions. Look, some people will never support anything apart from heterosexuality, and you can't change some people's minds, and being punitive to them is not productive in my mind. But when someone has a public platform and uses it to spread really fucking nasty homophobic hate, lies about transgender people, and is also a filthy fucking racist on top of them, fuck them. She is an awful person. Jenny, you think she's a closeted lesbian? Look, there is a certain pattern with the people who are most publicly outspoken against certain things actually are that thing. Like she's just this ridiculous thing like, oh, tennis, it's full of lesbians. Okay, they're everywhere. And yes, there have been some extremely high-profile lesbians in tennis. Probably the most notable is Martina Navratilova. But no, Margaret Court is just a horrible person. She's awful. This goes beyond a difference of opinion. There's a difference of opinion and not necessarily thinking the other person's completely fucking awful. Margaret Court is a thoroughly awful person. She's awful and hateful, and that sort of rhetoric endangers lives. It validates nasty shit. So, yeah, the bottom line is she's just fucking awful. And God, even by fucking 1950s standards, she's ultra conservative. But in the modern world, she's just a fucking dinosaur, and she's awful. She's just a horrible person. So yes, she's right out as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, Joe Will pointing out that someone who calls themselves a Christian is also a judgmental, nasty person. I often say, particularly when I see in America the extreme evangelicals, I mean, wow, it's really lucky the stuff that you profess to believe isn't true, because if a tenth of it was, you're going straight to hell. You're just like, you know, you are such an awful person. If the Christian God existed, if Jesus existed, you have an eternity of punishment waiting for you for being so vindictive. I mean, it's actually there. Like, tie themselves in knots to say, oh, why being gay is wrong. Because there's a book in the Old Testament, in the Jewish books of law, that says things about it being an abomination. Are you an Orthodox Jew? Is that what you're saying? No. Because, okay, let's go with what Jesus said about the gays, which was nothing, but did say about love one another as I would, treat people as you would be treated. And like, there is black and white stuff in the New Testament that says beyond a doubt, evangelical Christians are going to hell. Absolutely going to hell. So, I look at them and go, wow, it is so lucky that it's not true. Oh, there's a good question. What would Jesus really look European? Because most of the representation in Western art is Jesus does look European. But of course, he was African. He was from Egypt. He was, his race would have been somewhere from North African to Middle Eastern. So at the very least, he was brown, but he was probably black. He certainly wasn't Caucasian. He certainly wasn't European. And because there wasn't even mass migration at that point in history. So yes, the historical personage of Jesus was, he was either Middle Eastern or African, or a mix of Middle Eastern and African ancestry. So he was brown or black. He was not European. Eagle Jew said he was a 4-foot Arab Jew. Probably. That seems historically accurate. Yeah, because I grew up Catholic. I went to. Why do I always see Jesus white? Well, the European tradition has been to portray Jesus as a European, to the point of him being blonde half the time. Yeah, it's just that really narrowly focused racism, basically. There's like, well, you know, we're good, decent white people. Our Messiah can't be black. So we're not going to be subjugated to a black man. That's not going to happen. What sort of ridiculous talk is that? So yeah, it's just that bloody medieval racism, basically. That's a good line. The apparent one theory that Jewish books of law have about 500 rules for straight people and only 3 for gays. So gays are more favoured by God. Oh yeah, that's a good line. If Jesus came back, he'd be crucified all over again. I mean, seriously, I mean, we make jokes. we make jokes about how Jesus would get crucified all over again, but seriously, the preachings in the New Testament, if you showed up in America today preaching that, the Christians would just bloody throw you out. You know, they would it wouldn't be the Jews crucifying you this time, it would be the evangelical Christians. Okay, Jenny is into the history of European religions and how the Christians killed off the pagans. Throw them to the lions. Yeah, Joe Will talking about Christianity being largely conservative these days. One of my favourite little memes I've seen is referencing Jesus versus the moneylenders in the temple, saying like, you know, you always get people saying, what would Jesus do? Just saying, according to the Bible, flipping tables and chasing people with a whip is one of the options. So, yeah, it's that's one of the things you can do. And just going, you asked what would Jesus do? He would see you as a hypocrite and smack the shit out of you, basically. And again, this is because I grew up Catholic and I went to Catholic school and I was an altar boy. I did a lot of Bible readings. I know the Bible quite well. Like, there's also a bit in the New Testament where Jesus says he actually, the translation is basically, he prefers atheists to vapid believers. He's going like, no, I prefer someone who is strong and definite in their beliefs to someone who's wishy-washy and doesn't really follow through and isn't really committed. So it's like the vast majority of people who call themselves Christian get specifically called out. Their behavior is specifically called out in the New Testament as unacceptable. So, yep. So someone asking, am I of Irish ancestry? My dominant ancestry is Irish and Scottish. And the Catholic side is Irish Catholic. I don't know. I know names of a lot of my ancestors, but I don't really know history beyond like my grandparents. And what's interesting is I know my grandfather, named Lynch, on my mother's side, was Catholic, but the love of his life, who he married, was not. And back in those days, it was quite hard for Catholics and non-Catholics to marry. You basically had to convert. So after some time and consideration, my grandmother did actually convert and married my grandfather. So then my mum is Catholic, but my dad was not. My dad's side is the Scottish sort of Presbyterian side and faced the same thing. Like, my mum wasn't going to give up being a Catholic. And it was very difficult to have a Catholic marriage if both parties weren't Catholic. And so he converted as well. So I come from a line of converts to Catholicism. But yes, so I've got a sort of feisty Irish-Scottish heritage, which manifests in weird ways. Like, there's a meme that gets put around every now and then, particularly if there's been some sort of terrorist incident and people saying don't blame all Muslims for this, because it shows a picture of London after an IRA bombing and says, why are you blaming all Muslims? When this happened, we didn't blame all Irish. We knew it was just a few cunts who were causing the problem. And I have a problem with that meme because the Irish generally were treated very badly. They were in fact persecuted for centuries, and specifically in the 20th century, anyone remotely perceived to be sympathetic to the IRA was persecuted and criminalised. And in fact, in people like, was it the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6, the Birmingham 4, the Guildford 6, people who were arrested and jailed for IRA bombings, and their only crime was being Irish. They had no connection to the IRA. So this thing's saying, oh, we didn't blame all Irish. Yeah, you fucking did, England. You fucking did blame all the Irish, particularly the Irish Catholics. And so pretending you didn't is fucking horseshit. Like under Thatcher, as that recently, the 80s, if you were perceived to be remotely sympathetic to the IRA, you weren't allowed on the BBC. Like one of my favourite bands, the Pogues, who were very influenced by traditional Irish music, sort of crossed with modern punk and rock. And they had one song that called out the treatment of Irish at the hands of the English and how people were jailed for the IRA's crimes, and their only crime was being Irish in the wrong place at the wrong time. Doing that got the Pogues banned from the BBC. Just saying that they didn't say anything positive about the IRA. They just said that Irish people are persecuted simply for being Irish, and that got them banned from the BBC. So fuck you people who use that meme saying all the Irish weren't blamed, because they fucking were until very, very, very recently. So that's a little spray there. and that all can be summarized as people are jerks. Almost like whenever something awful happens and people say, oh, how could someone kill children? How could someone target innocents? How could someone drop bombs there? How could they? Well, if your starting point for every analysis of that is people are jerks, it starts to make more sense, because that's what drives most of the injustice and most of the horrific things that happen in the world. It's driven by the fact that people are essentially fucked. And it's just a constant struggle to get above that. And it really sucks. Patriotic Aussie asked me about Irish unification. Okay, I'm not actually Irish, I'm just of Irish ancestry. Such an act would obviously be down to the Irish people. I would be in favour of Irish unification. That whole divide thing that the Brits did was the typical colonial thing of divide and conquer. Make people fight among themselves, so your power's not threatened. The English were brutally efficient at that. I would be in favour of Irish unification rather than having Britain controlling Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland being a republic. Should be a united Ireland that's a republic. But that would be down to the Irish people to decide. Which, of course, is not in their power at the moment, because the English control Northern Ireland, so the Irish people don't actually get to decide that, which is a whole pile of bullshit. But that's just nothing. This is my feisty Irish ancestry, like fucking palms, what are you fucking doing? Mrs. Angry's English, I shouldn't say that too loud. So people have occasionally heard my partner's voice off to the side go, she's English. And yes, she is. She's been here since the late 80s, early 90s. But yeah. Oh dear. Unionists lost the last Northern Ireland election. Yes. In Ireland, the pendulum is swinging towards unification. Various times over the last 100 or so years, it's, the dominant feeling has been one way or the other. I think it's fair to say the popular sentiment has swung more towards Irish unification now, rather than the Unionists running things completely in Northern Ireland. So it might happen. These days, you'd like to hope that any transition like that would be peaceful, because it wasn't that long ago that things were not peaceful. Although I will throw aside, basically 100 years of civil war. Might not have been all out in the open for the whole 100 years, but the Irish trying to break free of British rule. It's basically, you know, like a 100-year civil war, and the Irish call it the Troubles, which is such a beautifully Irish thing. Like civil war that, you know, was so much death, tore so many families apart, caused so much hardship and misery, dragged on for so long. In the quintessential Irish way, that's just referred to as the Troubles, which is absolutely beautiful in my book. So weird sort of Irish sensibility. It's not always in humour, but the Irish humour as well I find really funny. Like, you ever read the writings of Spike Milligan? Is just really good. Or even comparatively cheesy stuff like the Irish Rovers. I remember my dad had just the cheesiest record collection when I was growing up. And ones like the Irish Rovers, and a lot of their songs were just light-hearted and whatnot. You know, they had a famous one about Noah and the unicorn, and how, I don't know, the unicorn slept in or something, so Noah never got the unicorns on the ark, and that's why there are no unicorns now. And there are these very Irish songs, and the one I always remember was the orange and the green. And for those who don't know, those are the colours of the Republicans and the Unionists, the anti and pro-English side. The green is the Republicans, the anti-English side. The orange is the Unionists, the pro-English side. And the protagonist in the song, The Orange and the Green, one of his parents is the green and one is the orange. So one of his parents is Catholic and one of his parents is Protestant. And that causes all sorts of stirs. And my favourite line in the song is they're at a wedding reception, someone else is getting married, and the two halves of the family there, and it's really tense because half Catholic, half Protestant, and it's really edgy all the time until at the reception, full-on fight finally breaks out. Like someone finally throws a punch, and then it's on, and he talks about uncle punching uncle, auntie punching auntie, and this going, and then there's just this line that sums it up for me where he says, "And me being strictly neutral, I punched everyone in sight." And that is the Irish sensibility, and that line has always made me smile. Well, now we're talking about where else could civil war happen in Australia? These days, I think Australians are generally too lazy. Hey, historical fact that doesn't get taught very much. In the early 20th century, it might have been during the Depression, Australia came this close to a right-wing coup overthrowing the government. This is not taught very widely. People pretend things like this haven't happened in Australia. If you've done a bit of Australian history, you might remember that when the Harbour Bridge was opened, as the State Premier of New South Wales was about to cut the ribbon, a guy charged up on a horse and stole his thunder, and with a big sword slashed the ribbon. And that guy was known as Captain de Groot, and he fancied himself a captain. He was of a group of political extremists who called themselves the New Guard. They are basically the alt-right of their day. They were young and feisty and all about revolution and overthrowing anyone they didn't like. The political left were dirty commies who had to be overthrown, and they didn't like this government, and that's why he upstaged the Premier who was going to open the bridge. And that's always portrayed as a kind of wacky thing, like, ooh, this guy jumped up on a horse and slashed the thing, and whoa, And the New Guard were a bit of a joke. But what wasn't a joke was the Old Guard. That was the old Conservatives, and they basically had a stranglehold on the military and the police force. And at one point, when they weren't happy with the government, they were this close to staging a military coup. And that's almost no Australians know that there was almost a right-wing military coup in Australia in the early 20th century. It's just glossed over. Australians are really good at glossing over their history. Anything that's mildly unpleasant, it's like, look, I'm not going to say it didn't happen, but I'm not really going to acknowledge it either. See, Joe Will? You got to look it up. Look up the old guard, the new guard and the old guard. Captain de Groot's a good starting point because he's the one that there's the most written about. But yeah, there was almost a right-wing military coup in Australia in the first part of the 20th century. So we could have been a dictatorship. That would have been fun. Christ, God knows the Liberal Party under Robert Menzies in the middle of the 20th century weren't much better than a dictatorship. Guy was Prime Minister for an insanely long time, for decades. My God, that was such a stagnant period of Australian history until change happened in the 70s. Oh, okay, no, okay. Chapman saying Queensland was a dictatorship, pretty close, under Joe Bjelke-Petersen, who cornered all the passport there, and yeah, that's pretty bad. Why is the Australian passport so expensive? Jenny, I don't know. I didn't know how expensive it was compared to other countries. I'm going to say because the Australian government doesn't want to give people Australian passports. I don't know. I don't know how expensive the Australian passport is compared to other countries. That's a blank spot in my knowledge. Oh yeah, okay, Jahatma. The thing that broke ground, this was in the 80s. Four Corners, the investigative current affairs show on the ABC, ran a special called Moonlight State where they investigated the endemic corruption in Queensland. Like, it was crazy. And this is why I always joke about Peter Dutton, because the Queensland police force has historically been so corrupt. And Dutton wasn't just a Queensland cop, he was a drug cop. So even in normally Mr. Stevens saying the sound's gone, but no one else is, so I don't know if the sound's gone for anyone else. See, Queensland police have always been so corrupt, and drug cops generally are so corrupt. So the fact that Dutton is a former Queensland drug cop, the chances of him not being corrupt or having dodgy shit in his background, I always go, oh look, yeah look, I'll grant it, Peter Dutton is the one Queensland drug cop who has nothing shady in his past. So, yeah, I don't think so. Oh look, here's a little bit of trivia. I tell this story sometimes. The Four Corners investigation into corruption in Queensland. They did I remember them doing a teaser for it. Chris Masters was the journalist's name. He said, doing the story for Four Corners, and in the course of our investigation, you know, we've been threatened, we've been followed by police, you know, we've had all these bad things happen. And because he often did investigation into other countries, you know, little tin pot dictatorships, he basically made it sound like he's in some tin pot dictatorship in a third world country and the corrupt local cops are threatening him. But then he finished and he goes, our investigation is in Queensland. It was like, ooh. And then it came out and there's a Royal Commission, ended up overthrowing a government, proving they were all fucking corrupt and had been for decades. But anyway, but here's a story. It didn't make it into the show because in fact, Chris Masters didn't find out until later. Someone told him, he was on a book tour, he'd written a book, and he told this story. He said, right towards the end of our investigation, when it was just about done, we had everything we wanted, we were ready to go, someone contacted me anonymously and said, I've got the final bit of evidence. I've got the thing that implicates the Premier directly into corrupt activity. I've got the thing to blow everything apart. It's like, meet me in this hotel room and I will show it all to you. And they thought about it, go like, well, this sounds good. But they said they were just about to leave, and the fact that this person was anonymous, wouldn't say who they were, wouldn't give them anything solid, and just said, just come to this hotel room. And because they'd been getting followed and threatened by the cops, and they were always second guessing everything. And they thought, oh no, this person being anonymous is too risky. We've already got everything that we think we need. If this person really has something, they will come to us eventually. Maybe we can do a follow-up. But no, I'm not going to go to the hotel room. So they didn't do it. They ran the show. It was a huge expose, exposed all these corrupt cops and politicians. Major, major thing. Anyway, about a year later, a cop came up to him and said, do you remember getting an invitation to meet an anonymous tipster at a hotel towards the end? Chris Master said, yeah. And he goes, you are so lucky you didn't go, because I was on that squad and I was part of that team setup. If you had gone to that room, what you would have found when you went in the door would have been a naked 12-year-old in the bed, and in the 2 seconds you stood there going, what the fuck, you would have been knocked down from behind by 20 cops with cameras, who would have thrown you onto the bed with a naked 12-year-old to just A, discredit you, and B, throw you in a cell and not let you out. So it's like you came that close to having your life ruined by these corrupt cops. I was going like, fucking hell, that is some hardcore shit right there. I mean, at this period in Queensland in the 80s, the Premier, Joe Bjelke-Petersen, was so paranoid about protests from unionists and leftists who didn't like him. He made it illegal to have public gatherings of more than 6 people. It was to the stage where basically, if you were with any sort of group of people, if the cops didn't like the look of you, they were completely within their rights to just bust you up, to just go, you guys can't stand here together. That constitutes an illegal gathering. And if you stood up for yourself one moment, you'd get your skull caved in with a fucking truncheon and dragged off to a cell, and that would be it. Like, there would be, the cops were within the law to do that, and you were screwed. So it's basically, if you stood up to a cop at all, you were fucked. And it was a very dark, dark place. Oh yeah, Joe Hood said Campbell Newman tried to bring that sort of shit back in. Yeah, people love power. Oh look, I'll tell you a funny story about Queensland, because I have family up in Queensland. My sister married a bloke who'd been a construction worker in Queensland, like a hardcore unionist up in Queensland in the dark days of Joe Bjelke-Petersen. And so, they fucking hated Joe. And he's a huge guy, like he's about 6'3", big guy, works on construction sites, so he's buff as fuck. And he told this, when I was at his wedding between him and my sister, his best man, who was one of his co-workers, old union mates, told a story how they were driving home from work one day. They were right through the middle of Brisbane. And they're all, so their stubbies and singlets and covered in dirt and sweat. And it's Queensland, it's hot. And they're driving in their ute through the city. And they saw there was some big gala opening. And it was a building that they happened to work on the construction of. And they just saw, there's all these spotlights and the media's all there. And there's a red carpet. And all the great and glorious were there in their finery, going up the red carpet, having their photo taken. And they were stopped at traffic lights looking at this going, oh, that's some bullshit, isn't it? Fucking look at that, we worked on that. And, well, look at them. They wouldn't have a clue, would they? And Jack, who's driving, just goes, no, they wouldn't. And the lights change, and he's shot through this industry, did a U-turn and drove up on the footpath of where this place was, and he strode out, this like 6'4" dude covered in dirt in his singlet and his stubbies, strode up to these people who were on the red carpet and pointed at the building and went, "Oi, I helped build that, but you wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" And all these camera flashes started going off. There's pictures being taken of him doing that, and someone from the red carpet came up and shook his hand and said, "Wonderful work, respect you," and Jack's got all these flashes going in his eye, and he doesn't realize, and he looked, and it was Joe Bioki Peterson shaking his hand, going, "Oh, beautiful job, beautiful job, beautiful job," and he's getting all these photos taken. And he's like the front page of the Courier Mail the next day with like this headline saying "Worker loves Joe" or whatever. And so his mate at the next union meeting, while they're having discussion, he gets up at the lectern and goes, "Point of order," and he holds up, he's kept this front page from the Courier Mail, and he holds it up and goes, "I think now's the time we should pass a censure motion against Brother Jack for this terrible act of betrayal of they fucked with him so much. Like, they didn't let him off this for ages. It took him ages to live this down that he ended up on the front page of the paper shaking Joe Bioki Peterson's hand. It was just priceless. So I thought, there's been so many dark stories in there. I thought a funny story for that one. But yes, I'm starting to speak. Yeah, I Joe, look, anyone who's worked like construction, blue collar, union stuff knows if people can fuck with you, they are gonna fuck with you. So, and they don't let it go. I mean, this other bloke, I'm trying to remember his name, but he had this huge Ned Kelly beard, and this was 30 years ago, before this was trendy. Adam, an old woman slapped your butt. What was her motivation? Was she saying that you had a nice butt? Is that what's going on? Joe, will you have a story, an IT story for fucking with people? I work in IT as well, I know what you mean. So, I was saying we're only 5 months into this year. I mean, yeah, we are living in surreal times right now. There is no two ways about it. Okay, Joe Will has a simple trick for us. This ought to be good. Learning how to fuck with people in an IT sense. I mean, I'm not saying we should look for ways to mess with people, but life being what it is, we often want ways to mess with people, and it lightens the mood sometimes. And I think that's why when you're in a work environment where it's boisterous or you know each other, I think it's why you do things like that. I mean, the whole notion of pranks has been cheapened by stupid TV shows and YouTube, but workplace. Okay, KK wants orange. Okay, what you do is screenshot the computer desktop. With the icons and yes, I know where you go with this, Joe. This isn't that there are. Oh God, now this burp's coming back at me. Yes. There are increasingly you hide the start menu and icons. Yes. How far are you taking? Because I've seen some versions of this that take it a really long way. Set the screenshot to the wallpaper. Yes. So now you've got a wallpaper that appears to have the start button and all the icons on it, but it doesn't, because you've actually hidden the icons and the start button. So it's actually just an image of that. So clicking on that stuff won't do you any good, but when it appears that it should. I don't know how far you want to take it, but yes. Yes, Joe. I've heard versions that even take it further. There's things you can do that flip the screen, that invert the mouse controls, so the mouse works the opposite way to what you think it will. Basically, you do stuff like that. You can really do people's heads. I mean, God, you can mess with people in really small ways with computers, because all mouses are infrared now. If you just stick a post-it note over the infrared, a little bit of a post-it note on the infrared, the mouse won't work, and the person will spend ages going, why isn't my mouse working? Because the little post-it you've put over the infrared is really innocuous. Keiko, you're leaving work to do a PhD. In what? I'm interested. In what area are you doing a PhD? Because it's a long time since I've been in study, and I certainly never went as far as a PhD. I only went as far as a BA. Human geography. That sounds interesting. This is even working as a hairstylist. Oh yeah, sending trainees to get wacky things. That's another fun thing. Wherever you work, there are ways to mess with trainees, like, people on construction workers telling people to go off and find a left-handed screwdriver. An ex of mine was a nurse, and in hospitals they have a million ways to fuck with people. Like, they get a new nurse, give them this massive trolley, and a bucket of welding sparks. That's a good one, Joe. One they did with nurses, they give them this massive trolley and say, go down to the dispensary and get a million units of this particular thing. You need the trolley because you're bringing back a million units. And it turns out a million units is one vial this big. So the nurse looks like a complete prat with a trolley wheeling up, going, can you give me a million units of X? And the person in the dispensary goes, sure. There you go. Stephen, you're right. Those things are mean. And that tells you something about human behavior. So all jobs have this. All jobs have this, being mean to someone. And it obviously crosses lines. You hear stories of apprentices getting fucking set on fire in some places. There are and people being driven to suicide. Bullying is obviously unacceptable, and it can be hard to know where the boundary is between it's a joke, we're just being lighthearted, and that was some fairly brutal bullying, and you've psychologically and or physically damaged that person, and that's not acceptable. That is always the thing. Like, there's always someone who takes it too far. This is why we can't have nice things, because there's always someone who breaks them. So a prop wash. Sorry, no, that is good, because that's an actual double meaning. That one. Give them a bucket and tell them to get some prop wash if you work in aviation. Right-wing politics is potions. You're not studying potions? Potions would be good. I wouldn't mind that, Professor Snape up the front. Working at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's serving. Damage. You made someone quit after. I've never made anyone quit. I've probably been a tad mean to some people in jobs. I think there is just a side of human nature where virtually anyone is capable of doing quite unpleasant things to other people while convincing yourself that you're not a bad person. Celtic King, what Mrs. Angry is, as per usual, it's Star Trek, and they're watching some Deep Space Nine, I think. Mrs. Angry and her son. So I always take these opportunities, the nights, which is like every second night, they're watching Star Trek. I'm going to do this. And as for right back at the start, I don't even know if anyone was still here who was there at the start, I'm going to attempt to do a video every day in June, if nothing arises. So I will probably do a lot of live streams because they count as video and they're easy to do. Oh, nailing boots to the floor. Okay, yeah, that is a popular prank. Yes, because you can hurt yourself when you do that. We're talking Star Trek, so I'm playing Star Trek Online. I am really interested in the new series of Star Trek coming out later this year. Ooh, Stephen. Okay, Stephen, you've already outed yourself as being mean. Now you want to tell a story about when you were really mean to a friend. You should do that. You should bare your soul. This is like group therapy now. You're going to bare your soul, tell some dark truths to people, and tell us the story of you being evil. Daily live streams. Okay. I don't think I'm going to do daily live streams, but at a guess, I will probably do at least 3 a week. New scary series. Yeah, look, I'm approaching the new series with an open mind. It's just got a really cool cast in it. Show. Alright, you're asking what time my live stream starts. The most common time, I mean, you have to look on your world clock. The most common time for my live streams is going to be between 8 and 10 p.m. my time. Wherever you are, I'm sure you can find a world clock thing to work it out. So that's 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Australian time. And I might try and do some during the day on the weekends, because then that's a different time of day for people in different time zones. So while 8 to 10 p.m. is, like convenient for me. Video dude masturbates to midget porn. You're not alone, How did that become the running joke though? When you're talking, people always throw up midget porn as like that's a completely weird thing. So I don't know how that became the running joke. Yeah, I have key time zones in my iPhone as well from people that I had to be in contact with in various groups. So I've got, like London in there. I've got the east and west coast of the US in there. And, Jenny, have I ever served on a jury? No, I have never. But it's Keiko. It's very insulting to little people for people to just always throw midget porn as a key joke. I have never been called for jury duty. So I don't know why, but I've never even been called for jury duty. So you're going to do the thing. I don't even know how it works in Australia. Do I still do gatherings? Yeah, I'm run a community of Melbourne YouTubers. We have meetups every month or two, because it's fun to have a social element along with YouTube and get people out from behind their screens. And we sometimes shoot videos together, sometimes just hang out socially. Every month or two we like to have a meetup. It's a little bit more fun to do them in non-winter months, but I found a couple of good venues for doing them inside. Would I come back to Sussex again? I'd like to. As I said, Mrs. Angry is English, so her family's all still in England. Yes, and I went to Arundel Castle. So I'm sort of no doubt would be there. Thing who disliked my vid? I don't know. Someone always does, Jenny. That's okay. I don't mind. Someone saw me on Flinders Street on Monday. Yeah, I work in the city. So if you ever do see me around, feel free to say hi, because I'm usually pretty friendly. But yes, I work in the Melbourne CBD, and so it would not be that unusual to see me wandering around, either at the beginning of the day, end of the day, lunchtime. Also, because the nature of my work, I have to go between different offices. So sometimes I'm just wandering around at random times of the day. there's a story going up there from Stephen. More than the entire bottle. Sorry, it comes up in paragraphs, and I try and read it, and then it fades away before seeing it, but everyone else is seeing it. So Stephen's telling a story. Joe, Will, you joke, but the another people, the number of people who've said they were scared to talk to me in public because they thought I'd be angry is pretty humorous. I mean, I understand why they think that, but because I'm actually not, it makes it funny. Oh, Patriot Aussie, do I like traveling? I wish that I had enough time and money to do more. I have not traveled very much at all. I feel a little bit deprived that way. I would love to travel, not least because I've made so many friends through YouTube who are in all different countries, and I'd love to go and visit them. It's kind of fun to visit places where there's someone you can meet and you know, let a local show you around. Because I often do that here. Like when people have visited here, I've said, yeah, no, hit me up. I'll show you around town. You know, take you to lunch or dinner or something. Because it's just fun to connect with people. Do many random people, not many, it does happen, but not many. Yeah, Joe, it's see, my difficulty with traveling is not just money, is not just work and time. I have a family as well. Or okay, people want to know what my booze is. You can't even see. See, that's not even booze. That's like an aloe vera drink, and there's some tonic water, and this is not booze. But on top of the fridge. Oh, there's one, that one I just made on the weekend, actually. That's my purple drink. That's vodka with some purple lollies dissolved in there. I know, Stephen, you told the story, and it was in these long paragraphs, and then they faded before I could read them. So I don't know what the story is. And the way this thing works, and also if your story comes up and there's someone else comments, it pushes your thing and it's gone, and I can't find it again. So I didn't see the story. So I don't know if you can copy, paste or whatever and put it back, and I'll try and read it again. I missed it. So I don't know what the story was. So what's there? There's some tequila up there, and oh my God, did anyone see the Mighty Car Mod guy drink fuel grade ethanol? That is a very dangerous thing. I have some drinks, like this one, with some herbs. This is a Crystal Head vodka decanter, but the thing in there is actually Polish rectified spirit, which is 95% ethanol alcohol, and I infused some herbs in it. You do not drink this shit straight. That is a very bad idea. As an experiment, Aidsy and I did that. We, a little shot glass, poured a little bit in mouth. It's such high alcohol, your mouth is warm enough to vaporize it. So when you put it in your mouth, if you hold it in your mouth, you can feel it like volatilizing on your tongue. Really fucked up the surface of my tongue for a couple of days, actually. But see, I flavour it because what the Polish people use the rectified spirit for is for infusions and various things. And this is with some herbs. I think this is lemon verbena and lemongrass. Abigail, maybe I meant evaporating rather than volatilizing, but volatilizing is a nice word, so I just threw it in there. But yeah, this is like a herbal tincture made with that. Yeah, I've got a lot of scallop bottles. This one had vodka in it. Patriotic Aussie. It's an interesting question. Who discovered alcohol? Obviously, it's hard to be sure exactly who. Abigail, you're right. It's a perfectly cromulent word. But I think the social scientists believe the way humans discovered intoxicating substances is from animals eating the plants and acting wacky. Like, it still happens in some parts of the world. I've seen some hilarious news stories, like from Scandinavia, of mooses eating rotted fruit that have fermented, and they get drunk, and then they get stuck in a tree because they're drunk. Like, seriously, look at Google drunk moose in a tree, and there'll be news stories on it. It's the same as in Tasmania. they grow opium poppies for medical grade opium and opiates. And wallabies have a bad habit of jumping into the paddock where the opium is and eating it and getting stoned, and then they can't get out of the paddock because they're like, fucking hell, man, oh, these little fucked up wallabies flopping around in and that's the thing that happens. And that's also, there's a belief that's how humans discovered coffee was a stimulant. Like their herd animals, like goats or something, ate the berries from a coffee plant and then went zinging all over the place. And the herdsman's going, wow, that's pretty weird. What's that? Does that have the same effect on me? So there's a belief that the reason humans discovered things like alcohol and drugs and stimulants is because they saw animals eating the fruits, etc., that have this effect, and then they just went, humans going, that looks interesting. I wonder what would happen if I had some of that. Okay, that's a good question. Patriotic Australian, have I ever agreed with conservatives or disagreed with leftists? I disagree with leftists really often. Agreed with conservatives, usually not on social policy, sometimes on economic policy I will. For instance, the Nationals promoted this idea. Then they're the most conservative mainstream party in Australia, and they represent farmers generally, and I grew up in the country. They had this thing like, because there's a big thing with liberalisation of international trade, cutting tariffs, like not having protection on your own industries, free trade, that sort of shenanigans. And the Nats said, this is costing Australian farmers money, this is costing Australian jobs. Go, okay, look, and they said, we're all for dropping our tariffs, but anything that gets imported, that should have, if we're importing something and that has some government kickback on their side, so if that has a government subsidy in its country of origin, we should whack a tariff equal to the government subsidy on it, so it's a level playing field. And that made perfect sense to me. I'm actually a bit of a lefty and I'm pro-tariff and pro-protecting your own industries, but that proposal from the Nationals to say, okay, if we're dropping our tariffs, if something coming in from another country is subsidised, we should just level it. We should say, okay, they've got a 20% subsidy, whack a 20% tariff on it, and then we're competing on an even footing. That was a policy that I thought made perfect sense. So that's one that springs to mind where I agreed with conservatives on their economic policy. So, about when do I disagree with leftists? I want to do a whole video that's a rant on the word problematic. You've all probably seen someone, progressive people, very well-meaning people, they'll refer to someone in the public eye as being problematic. And what that means is that person's not perfect. It's like, okay, I really like that musician. I think what they do is really good. And someone goes, well, they're problematic because they wear this outfit that's from another culture, and that's cultural appropriation, or their style of music is actually from a different ethnic culture, that's cultural appropriation. It's not so much that that isn't true, but it's this idea that they just throw the word problematic, like, oh, you can't like them because they said or did a thing once that wasn't perfect in my view. It's creating this ridiculous fucking idea that somehow people can be perfect. Nobody's perfect. Everyone thinks, well, not everyone thinks they're perfect. Some people are very harsh on themselves. But it's not that I think I'm wrong in anything I do or say, but I know that other people who aren't awful people have problems with things I say or do occasionally. And that's fine, but pushing the idea is like, just this magic word, problematic. Well, you shouldn't read that author's books because they're problematic. You shouldn't listen to that musician because they're problematic. It's like, you know, people fuck up. And honestly, I'll be honest, if I think someone's bad enough, I won't patronize them. I won't, you know, watch their movies or read their books or listen to their music or buy their products, because it's like, no, fuck that person. That person's awful. No, I'm not going to support them at all. But just these little things where it's like, oh, because they transgressed there, they fell outside of my orthodoxy, they must be punished. And I was like, well, I'm all for calling something out and saying, hey, that bit of behavior there, that's a bit of bullshit. You should be better than that. But taking it into this thing where, you know, it's all encompassing and, well, they're not perfect, so therefore I'm going to write them off completely. Like, I block people who hassle me on social media. If someone writes obnoxious comments on my YouTube channel or on Twitter or whatever, I've got no time for that. I'm not wasting my time on those fucking people. And I've learned from many years' experience, they never fucking shut up. If someone went, bleh, I hate you because of this reason, if I thought that I could just respond and say, okay, well, the reason I disagree with you is this, and then they'd fucking shut up because they had their say and I had my say, I'd be fine with that. But they don't. They never fucking shut up. They just don't. So I won't waste my time. You know, life's too short. My sanity's too valuable to me to waste time on fucking idiots. So when someone acts like a fucking idiot, I'll just block them. I'll usually say something disparaging about their proclivities with farm animals and then block them. Because I just don't have time for that shit. And 99 times out of 100, the people who I block are extreme right, like, you know, alt-right neo-Nazis, full-on fucking racists, homophobes, sexist piece of shit, like absolute garbage people that I just don't want in my life. But occasionally there will be lefties, like one, I did a video when David Bowie died, because some people thinking they were being sort of edgy or sort of more right on than anyone else, saying like, oh, you can't like David Bowie because of him shagging underage groupies. Or the people also throwing this stuff about him being a fascist, which is actually just not right. But the underage groupie things was actually about a real thing that happened in the 70s, like early 70s. Bowie's first real rise to fame, he was in LA, and there's this scene, and it's fucked, called the baby groupies. And this was girls who were like 13, and often with their mothers dressing them up and getting them to go with rock stars to, I don't know, I assume get money or benefits from it. And this was a really common thing. And Bowie definitely did, like, fuck one of these 13-year-olds. It's completely illegal. He knew it was illegal and he did it anyway. But it was at a time in his life, like, you know, he's this little working class lad was thrown into this wild world and this was being pushed on him and he went for it. And that was a very bad decision on his part. It was very, very wrong. I'm sure in his own mind, he's going, well, she's coming onto me. She's being pushed on me. I'm not doing it. Yeah, and that's just a bullshit cop-out. And so I made this video where I acknowledged that's real. That is a real thing that happened. No, like, basically no one contests it. But there was never any criminal charge because no one would file a criminal complaint against Bowie because, you know, the girl was actually pushed on him. Yes, Keiko, I did do this video with AZ. And most people were like, well, you know, that's interesting. I didn't know that about Bowie. Or some people still said, well, I still think that shit. And I was like, that's fine. I was just saying, first, most of the people who have been hypercritical of Bowie for this are just lacking any understanding at all of the world Bowie was in. In my mind, it doesn't excuse Bowie. He's still culpable for that, but he didn't make a habit of it. There's like no other accusations over his entire career of him shagging underage girls or boys, because he liked girls and boys, obviously. But he definitely did it this time, and he was definitely wrong. But the idea of saying, I'm going to discount his 4 or 5 decade career, incredibly influential, because of this stupid and wrong thing that he did in the 70s, I just can't really go there. If he'd made a habit of it, like if you're someone like Rolf Harris or Bill Cosby or anyone else who's a serial abuser, I would absolutely refuse to gloss over. I'm not even glossing over it with Bowie, but it's not who he was habitually. Whereas, you know, Rolf Harris, Jimmy Savile, Bill Cosby, they are serial abusers. But I'm not willing to write off Bowie because he did this thing. And I had this one self-proclaimed feminist who just said, well, that's not good enough. You're not allowed to think. She basically said, I'm not allowed to think that. And I went, well, I said, you're perfectly at liberty to disagree with me, but I express that's how I feel about it. And if you disagree with me, well, that's kind of life. And she said, no, that's not good enough. You're just wrong. And I went, okay, what? Yeah, you know, whatever. And I basically said, I don't care that you're really upset at me for thinking that. That's just how you feel. And then she go, well, I'm going to make sure that no one thinks you're a feminist supporter and blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh no, I'm having my feminist credentials withdrawn. Oh no. But because one person's really worked up. And I ended up blocking it because she wouldn't shut the fuck up. It's like, I gave you a platform and I didn't say anything hostile, but you wouldn't shut the fuck up. And you were literally demanding that I not have my own opinion, that I have your opinion. And I was like, fuck that. No. So yes, I do regularly disagree with left-wing people. Most often disagree with right-wing people. Sometimes agree with right-wing people. But that's just who I am. Yeah, Abigail, turfs and swerfs. I have no time for turfs and swerfs. Yeah, Kako, with you, you've got to look at a spectrum. If you look at someone's entire life and narrow in on a mistake or a bad or evil thing they did, but if that wasn't them in their totality, if that's not who they were all the time, don't gloss over it. But the idea of discounting their entire life because they did this here, I think is kind of stupid. Yes, looking it up, Yori, TERFs, trans excluding radfems, radical feminists who refuse to acknowledge that transgender women are women, and SWERFs, sex worker excluding radfems. Radfems who say that all sex work is evil and wrong and porn is wrong, and refuse to actually listen to any sex workers who disagree with them, and they exclude sex workers from the conversation, which I think is bad. No, damaging. Problematic does not equal contrarian. Those are two different things. Usually if someone calls themselves a contrarian, I'm almost convinced they're going to annoy the shit out of me. KK, you're absolutely right. That's why there's the R in there. It's the self-proclaimed radfems who refuse to acknowledge trans women as women, and I have no time for them at all. Same as the SWERFs, the sex worker excluding radfems. But you're damaging, getting back to someone who says they're contrarian, that's usually just a code for complete prick. Like, you think we should be decent to other people. I'm a contrarian and I'm going to shit all over people who are weaker than me. Like, no. So, yeah, there are certain warning signs to me where I look at it and go, okay, if that's how you're defining yourself, I'm almost definitely going to find you to be a complete prick. Contrarian is one. Someone who goes free speech all the way is normally always going to be a prick. But look, oh my God, I think time's getting on. They've been going on for over 2 hours now. I'm going to go to bed because I'm old and I have work tomorrow. So it's like 20 past 10 now. I expect the Star Trek marathon to end at about 10, but it's still going. And so I don't know why that's still going. They must have started late. Anywho, I'm going to bed. Night. thank you everyone. And thank you everyone for joining in. I've really enjoyed this. And Keiko's got work right now. Well, I've got a few hours sleep and then I'm going to work. Thank you all for joining me. Like I said, because I'm attempting to do a video every day this month, video every day in June if nothing arises. That's my VEDJINA month. So some will be pre-recorded and edited, and there'll be a lot of live streams, probably at least 3 times a week. So keep an eye out for that. Look forward to seeing you over this month. Bye now.